This video is sponsored by Classic Football Shirts, the best place to get your classic and vintage football shirts. To get cheap retro Palace shirts, click the link in the description below. And for an extra 10% off, use the code CFSPJ10 at checkout. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast I'll be looking over the game against Swansea City by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you interviews with Roy Hodgson, Alexander Sorloth and Ryan Innes after the game. So let's begin. And Alexander Sorloth's strike was enough to secure Crystal Palace's place in the third round of the Carabao Cup on the crisp evening in South Wales. Palace first threatened on 7 minutes when Aaron Wan-Bissaka made a surging run down the right and played a low ball across the box to Max Meyer. The Eagles' number 7 let it run onto his left foot and thumped it goalwards, but Swansea got bodies in the way. Meyer was involved again 5 minutes later when he exchanged neat passes with Jeffrey Slupp down the left before finding Jason Puncheon in space inside the box. The captain took a touch on the turn and flashed a powerful effort just wide of the far post as Palace began to grow into the game. The Eagles continued to push and Sorloth had a go shortly after, but his volley was blocked behind for the first of 3 consecutive set pieces, all of which Swansea coped with. Yan Danda and Dan James looked the Swans' most likely threats, as both caused problems with their pace down the flanks, but neither really tested the Palace resolve. With minutes left of the first period, Sorloth had another opportunity to open the scoring, but his header went over from a Puncheon corner. That was about it for the first half's action, and the sides went in scoreless in South Wales. Palace started the second spell strongly, but there were a few clear-cut chances, and it was goalkeeper Vicente Guaita who was called into action to deny the home side with 66 minutes on the clock. Danda and James combined, with the former playing in the latter through a no-look pass, but the Eagles stopper stood strong and parried the winger's effort behind for a corner. That Swansea attack sparked the game back into life, but unfortunately for them, first blood was Palace's. Riedewald received the ball in space out on the left, got his head up and played an eye-of-the-noodle pass to the feet of Sorloth, who burst into the box and stabbed home the game's opener on 70 minutes. Palace kept Christoph Nordtveit busy in the Swansea goal around the 80-minute mark, with Meyer, Sullay, Kaikai and Puncheon all being denied in quick succession. Very little else happened in the final minutes as Palace held on to their lead to progress to the third round. Crystal Palace progressed to the third round of the Carabao Cup with victory against Swansea City on Tuesday night. Norwegian striker Alexander Sorloth netted his first goal in a competitive fixture for Palace to settle the contest in the Eagles' favour, after a decent contest between two much changed sides. But there were several talking points arising from the game. Here are some of them. Promising signs from summer signings. Crystal Palace made 9 changes from the 2-1 defeat to Watford on Sunday, with only Jeffrey Slupp and Martin Kelly keeping their places. There were first starts for Palace for summer signings Vicente Guaita, Kaikai and Max Meyer, with each of them putting in a steady shift. And their performances earned praise from manager Roy Hodgson, as he outlined why he had been impressed with them in his post-match press conference. Pleased as punch. Jason Puncheon was making his first appearance in a competitive fixture for Palace since New Year's Eve when he sustained a serious knee injury. And he too received praise from his manager, who described him as an important part of the Eagles' victory. He performed well in midfield and has given his manager food for thought ahead of the final few days of the loan window, having been linked with a move away. Great for Sorloth. Norwegian striker Alexander Sorloth finally opened his account for Crystal Palace in its 8th appearance for the Eagles. The 22-year-old has featured 7 times in the Premier League since his deadline day move from FC Midtjylland in January, but he has not found the net in that time. But in his first cup appearance for the Eagles, he notched his first goal in a competitive game in a red and blue shirt, having scored twice in pre-season. The question is now, can he take it into the Premier League, and will he be pushing Christian Benteke for a starting place? Will he, won't he? Jonny Williams has had several years of being in and out of the picture at Palace. Since being a regular in Palace's promotion-winning campaign in 2012-13, he has found his opportunities with the Eagles limited. Indeed, this was his first start for Palace since an FA Cup tie back in January 2014, having had several spells out on loan in recent seasons. He did reasonably well here against Swansea and earned praise from manager Roy Hodgson, but it still remains to be seen whether another loan spell beckons for him or whether he will stay at Palace this season. A long time coming. Ryan Innes has been with Crystal Palace for several years, having come through the academy, but this was the 23-year-old's first team bow at Palace, having amassed almost 70 appearances on loan at other clubs in recent seasons. He has spent his time in the first team in pre-season and in training, but this was his first taste of first team action at Palace, and he will now hope for more, having put in a solid shift at the back for the Eagles and being part of keeping a clean sheet. So I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, but before I start, don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest Palace news. And also, if you're on Facebook, do feel free to join our Facebook group, which is a really great place to join in with discussions and also share your opinions with other fans. And much like a forum, it's also a great place not only to post your own opinion, but also read what other fans are saying and just generally sort of get a broader perspective of different opinions about the club. Now, if you are someone like me who likes to keep up to date with all the latest news, whether that be transfers, whether that be just sort of changes within the club, then of course do follow us on both our Twitter and Facebook pages. You know, we do regularly update them with the latest news, especially during the busy transfer window. And also, if you are on Facebook as well, don't just follow us, but also join the Facebook group, because like I said already, you can go on there, have discussions with us, post your own opinion, share any links you think we've missed. And like I've said already, much like a forum, it's not only for you to post your opinion, but also for you to read what others are saying as well. Now, if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then obviously feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings, obviously rating the players' performances from 1 to 10. And even if you are not interested in doing player ratings, and if you're a Swansea fan or even a Palace fan, just comment your general views of the game. You know, how you thought the game was contested, what you thought of the starting 11, how you thought the game could have panned out if different chances had been finished from either side. So all different things like that, all different basically discussion points from the game. And you don't want to do the player ratings, then of course do drop them below. And the main reason for that is obviously you come to the podcast to listen to my opinion, but I want to read yours, so do comment below, share your opinion so that I can read through them and maybe comment back on them and sort of have a discussion there. But also any other fans, whether you be Swansea or Palace fans, if you do come to the video, don't just listen to my opinion, have a look in the comment section so you can get a broader perspective of different opinions of the game as a whole. Now, of course, if you do want to follow any of these social media pages, or of course join the Facebook group, which you'll be accepted in quite quickly because we obviously do have quite a good system with that, then of course do check all the links that will be in the description below. But obviously, before I'm going to go on to talk about my player ratings, I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there. You know, this is a cup game in the Carabao Cup. Not many people care too much about it, so that's why I'm not going to give you too much detail in this section of the podcast. Basically, mainly because obviously people don't care about it. You know, the cup isn't as important as the league, and to be honest, obviously the league's more important, but people obviously don't give so much regard for this cup because it's probably the second ranked cup. Obviously more people care for the FA Cup, but this cup, nevertheless, for some people, in my opinion, I think it's quite good. It's a good chance to win a trophy, but for others, it's not really that important. So for that reason, I'm not really going to go into too much detail about the performance and obviously how the players played as well. Some people, like, just generally are not interested. They only care about Premier League games, which is fair enough. I totally get that. You know, you want to concentrate on the league rather than the cup games. And also, it's just two teams playing their reserve team. You know, I think Swansea had 9 changes. We had about 9 as well. So realistically, it's not really the best spectacle because you're just playing both reserve teams. So really, there's not really too much to read into it. Hence why I'm not going to give you too much detail into each players individually and, of course, their performances to go with it. Now, instead of that, I'm just going to give you sort of a small summary. I've written a few bullet points for each player. I'm just going to go through them quite quickly just to give you an idea of the game as well, the result, and of course for those of you who are actually interested in the cup, just how we played, how the players performed, and actually a few plays to watch out for, because certainly there were a few players who I thought actually done really well and actually sort of probably made Hodgson actually have to think about his lineup or his bench in coming weeks because of how good these players' performances were. And certainly there were a few players here I think actually, yes, they may not necessarily get into the starting 11, but maybe it's time that they actually get a place on the bench because their performance here was quite good. And overall, my final point really about what I'm going to do is just talk about how well we're progressing, because obviously we started the season relatively well performance wise. This was obviously another good performance here, so it just shows. I'm just going to really talk about the players, the performance, and obviously how we're progressing and how the competition could help us going forward, because we've got West Brom in the next round, so that's another relegated side in the Championship. So maybe we've got obviously West Brom's not an easy day out, but actually maybe it's a slightly easier game than some of the other teams who were in the competition, so maybe that will give us a chance to progress, give these players, these fringe players, a chance to play, and of course maybe, you know, have a push to try and actually win the competition overall. But I'm going to start with the player ratings now. Obviously starting goal, Vicente Guaita, going to give him a 6. You know, this was his first competitive start for Palace. Wasn't really tested other than a few saves he had to make against obviously the Swansea attackers, who I must say, even though it was a young team, Swansea were pretty good on the counter-attack. Obviously in the second half there was one save in particular which was really good, so we've got to give him credit there. And like I've said already, it was his debut, so sometimes things could go bad, sometimes things he could do absolutely fantastic. I think I've given him a 6, fairly good performance from him, and this performance really just concreted the point that I said recently, in the fact that he's obviously providing that competition for Hennessy, what he's needed for years now. He's now got it, and that seems to be improving his performances as well. But certainly based on this performance, we've got a very solid backup player there. Obviously the right back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I'm going to give him an 8. Absolutely fantastic again, coming back from his suspension where he was obviously sent off against Liverpool, basically slotted in seamlessly back into that right back role. Didn't look out of place, and just it didn't look like he hasn't really played in a match, obviously in a week and a bit. Obviously, like he always does, and he's only played 10 games for Palace, but the fact that he impressed us again was obviously very good as well. And unlike what he has been in his, you know, the 8 or 9 Premier League games he's played, where he's been very, very good defensively, slide tackles and things like that, in this game here, he was obviously good at that, hence why I've given him the 8. But the thing that I was most impressed with is just how much of a threat he was down that right. You know, he got forward quite a lot, whether that be dribbling past players or whether that be delivering balls into the box. Whatever it was, everything about his play, both defensively and offensively, was really good, hence why I've given him the 8. Like I said already, I'll go on to talk about the man of the match shortly, but I've got to say he is obviously one of the players, one of our best players on the night, and certainly is up there, you know, as one of the contenders. Now, to be honest, the words to describe his performance, the impact he's had on the team and things like that, are basically, you know, there's too many of them, because at the moment his performances have been so fantastic, there's not really too much to say about them. But we are slowly but surely running out of words to describe him, because he put in another fine performance, albeit against a Swansea reserve team. But the fact that he's still able to perform at any level against any opposition to that high standard is obviously very good as well, because sometimes players can be fantastic against higher opponents but less so against others because they become complacent. But obviously Wan-Bissaka here seems to be good against everybody. Obviously moving on now to our first centre back, Ryan Innes, going to give him a 6. I thought, considering this was his first competitive start for Palace, his debut, I think, you know, considering he's had a few loan spells away from the club recently, I still think we put in a pretty decent performance. That's why I've given him a 6. Much like I've said with quite a few players this season, I think he took his time to grow into the game, but he slowly got into the game after sort of a few shaky moments in that first half. Obviously there was one particular moment in that first half where you know, I think he got deflection on the ball, and I think it was Dan James who got the ball in the area. Slightly fortunate, let's say, with that deflection. Obviously there was a bit shaky there, you know, that bounce could have gone anywhere, and obviously that's when he was caught in possession midway through that first half. But after that sort of little blip and into that second half, he grew more with confidence and certainly looked quite assured at the back. And like I've said, believe it or not, considering he's been at Palace for many years now, and yes, he's been on loads of loans, but considering how long he's been at the club, it was quite surprising that this was his first team debut. But to be honest, he is a highly rated defender in the fact that the club have kept him at the club for so long, so there must be something there. But obviously maybe because he's had a few setbacks and things weren't really going his way, you know, out of football as well, maybe that stopped his progression and sort of his development as a player. But certainly the fact that the club has still got him obviously shows that they highly rate him, and certainly this performance here was quite promising in the fact that showing that actually he could be a very good backup player, just come in and play the odd game. And maybe the loan spell, I think he's gone to Dundee as I'm recording this, hopefully that him going there will just develop him even more as a player, playing at a slightly higher level, you could say, than some of the lower league teams in England he's been playing at the moment. So maybe that will help him in his development even more, but certainly a good game from him. So obviously playing alongside Innes was obviously Martin Kelly, one of only 2 players who played against Watford at the weekend to obviously start in this game. I'm going to give him a 7 because I thought he was obviously, like I've said already, one of only 2 players to keep their place in the side, and considering he played only 2 days before. I think he put in a very solid performance at the back. Didn't really show any signs of fatigue, which is of course what you would expect from a player of his quality. Not necessarily the best defender you could have, but a very consistent, reliable backup option. Now once again, I talked about the fact that we made loads of changes and it was sort of basically the reserves playing, but he still provided a little bit of experience and a sort of calm head at the back, and considering this was his debut for the club, it's always good to have a more experienced professional alongside you who's obviously got that experience, and certainly Martin Kelly did sort of help Innes throughout the game. And obviously just before the hour mark he was substituted off, and personally for me, looking at the game, I'm thinking most of the players who got subbed off, you're looking at the likes of Martin Kelly, Jeffrey Slupp, that basically sort of gives me the hint that actually these guys are going to be starting tomorrow, obviously on Saturday against Southampton. So obviously he weren't playing bad, just got substituted because I think he's probably in the running to start at the weekend. Obviously we talked about it in the podcast for the Watford game, the fact that he came in quite late in, but once again, like I said, even though he's had obviously all of that aggro with coming in right at the last minute against Watford, putting in a relatively good performance there, obviously he was alright in that game. But the fact that he's a few days later gone into playing this game and still putting quite a confident, competent performance, and you know that was quite good as well. And even though Swansea, even though they had quite good pace on the counter-attack, they were just lacking a bit of firepower, so it was relatively easy for Kelly to deal with it. But I still thought, like I've said already, because he has that experience and that calm head, I thought he'd done a relatively good job at the in central defence. Obviously, playing alongside him at left back was Jeffrey Slupp. Going to give him a 6 again because I think his performance was good. Obviously, he was one of the other players who played against Watford at the weekend, played in this game here. Now, I think, you know, I've said this loads of times actually. The fact that he's very versatile in this game here. You know, at the weekend he played as a left winger. This game here, once again, showing that versatility. Played at left back, put in a very competent performance, and like I've said already, sometimes for players when they play in midfield, for example, sometimes it can take them a few weeks to get back to playing in a new position, but because of how well Jeffrey Slupp can adapt and how versatile he is, it didn't really seem to affect him. The fact that he moved basically back from midfield, moving back to defence. And like I've said already, even much like Martin Kelly, even though he didn't play the whole game, which suggests to me he's going to play against Southampton at the weekend, even though he only played an hour before being taken off, I still thought it was a relatively good performance from him. And like I've said already, he put in a good shift considering he only played 2 days before. So overall, I do think a 6 is a fair result for him. So we're going to move on now to the midfield, starting with Jaïro Riedewald. Now actually I was quite impressed with his performance, so I've given him a 7 overall. Now obviously he's been in and out of the team since pre-season. You know, he obviously was linked with a move away to Swansea incidentally, but obviously this was his first start of the campaign, and actually I thought in the midfield, playing sort of as the deepest lying midfielder, I thought he'd done a really great job, I suppose, of breaking up the midfield. Yes, Swansea, like us, didn't have the best quality on the field, but obviously they still posed a threat at times, and I think Riedewald done a great job of just breaking up that play in the midfield and allowing Palace to have a greater control of the game. And obviously when Jeffrey Slupp came off, because like I've already said, I think he's going to play against Southampton, obviously Riedewald, once again showing how versatile he is, he moved and played the rest of the game at left back, done a very good job there, and obviously that's great to see as well. You know, we've got a player who can not only be very good and competent in defence or defensive midfield, but also they can move into defence and do a job on either flank as well. So that was of course great to see as well. Now the thing really that impressed me the most, and the main reason I've given him that 7, is just the assist for Alexander Sorloth's goal. Obviously Sorloth had numerous chances throughout the game, you know, a few headers, a few shots which were deflected out for corners, so he had quite a few chances on goal, but this one was absolutely superb. Not only was the finish good in the fact that he was able to, you know, power it past, or get past 2 defenders and power it past the goalkeeper, not only was that fantastic, but the assist as well. You know, Riedewald picked up the ball when Innes sprayed it out to the left, and Riedewald's played sort of a pinpoint pass through the 2 defenders to Sorloth, who's obviously shrugged the defenders off and scored. So not only was the goal good, but actually the build up to the goal, and of course the assist from Riedewald was good as well. And the fact that he was so good in midfield and got the assist is the main reason I've given him a 7. And as I've said already, you know, you could expect maybe his head may have gone, because obviously he was close to joining Swansea in the summer. I think it was rumoured he was going to, but he rejected it. But nevertheless, he was linked with a move there. But once again, this game sort of showed to me why he's such a good squad player, because it showed it's actually a good thing that he stayed, because of obviously that quality he's got on the ball and defensively as well. And like I've said already, the main thing for me is obviously that great assist for that winning goal, obviously helping us to win the game 1-0. Obviously, playing alongside him in midfield was obviously one of Palace's new signings, Kaikai. Going to give him a 6. Once again, like a few players I'm talking about in the starting 11, this was obviously his first competitive start for Palace, and he did sort of start the game by giving the ball away sort of in the opening seconds. So obviously not the best start to the game, but much like a few players, he slowly grew into the game, and as the game wore on, I thought he got better and better, was more composed in midfield. And actually, because Riedewald was playing deep quite a lot of the time, Guaita was actually going quite far forward and was involved with quite a lot of our attacks. So once again, a midfielder who's not only good defensively, but offensively as well. And you know, I thought in the second half especially, he had a lot more impact, and certainly was, you could argue he was one of the key players in terms of us pushing to get that elusive goal, which of course we did in the end. And of course, you know, we know he's come off the bench quite a few times in the last few weeks or so, but once again, it's good for players to get the game time, sort of embed themselves into the team and just get their fitness up. So it was obviously good, and it was obviously good for him to get the game time, but also it's important for him to get that game time just so it can show the quality he's got, so he can get up to fitness, but also sort of adapt to Roy Hodgson's system, because essentially we were playing, I'd say a 4-2-3-1 maybe, possibly. Looking at the team, you could say it was that sort of formation, but the fact that he's brought Guaita in, and the fact that he had that important game time to build up his fitness and obviously slot into the side well, that was of course great to see as well. Now, one of the players that impressed me quite a lot was another midfielder playing slightly more advanced than the other two I've already gone through, and that is of course one of our other signings, Max Meyer. Now, I'm going to give him a 7 for his performance, because I thought Max was absolutely outstanding in this game. And actually, in terms of what we saw from him at Schalke, that's exactly what we saw up here. We saw here against Swansea. Now, like I've said already, it may not be the best quality oppositions, but nevertheless, we were also playing a side of majority reserve, so you can expect it to be a bit of a drab game. But I thought Max, playing sort of slightly more advanced than the other two midfielders, I thought he'd done a great job in terms of his link-up play, especially in terms of sort of that transition from midfield to attack. I thought his link-up play from that was very good, but just sort of when he got into that final third, he just sort of lacked that sort of telling pass when in some really good crossing positions or good passing positions on a couple of occasions. So that wasn't all the time, but there were just a few times where I'm looking at it going, you've managed to get the ball from, you know, from the centre of the field to that final third, and you've basically got the quality to do that, but you didn't quite have the quality to finish off that chance, put the cross in or put the pass in. So that was the only disappointing thing is, but you know, at the end of the day, I reckon he's going to be playing more defensive for Palace, sort of the Carabao role. So if he can do that in games and just spray the ball out to someone like, I don't know, let's say Jeffrey Slupp on the wing, or even Andros Townsend, if he can move the play and transition it from the midfield to the attack, and then even if he hasn't got that sort of that telling pass yet, if you can just spray the ball out wide, we can create chances like that. So this just showed to me that actually, even though he didn't have his best game, he still showed lots and lots of quality in it. And like I've said already, even though he lacked that telling pass, the fact that he linked up playing midfield, the fact that we still saw glimpses of his ability, and the fact alongside Guaita he sort of helped up Palace to get into that the front foot in that second half and push on to get that win, that was of course great to see as well. And you know, the final point really for me is, and the main reason I've given him a 7, is just the fact that he gave us glimpses of what we hoped for and what we expect from him, and that's what you want from a new signing. You know, there was lots of hype around him, but the fact that he met that and sort of, maybe you could say surpassed our expectations of him, because we thought maybe he's not fully fit yet, but the fact that he performed so well and obviously just gave us a performance which we expected from him after all the hype was of course great to see as well. And for me personally, based on this performance and based on how I think Roy will use him in our system, I reckon it's only a matter of time before he makes his first Premier League start. And I personally predicted he will start, but I think maybe give it after the international break and then we'll see him in the side, because I think Roy likes to stay with the same system, but I think over the international break he may sort of bring other players into his system as well. Now, once again, playing in the midfield, and I say in the midfield, he was playing wide as well, but that was of course the captain, Jason Puncheon. I'm going to give him a 6 for his performance, because I thought once again he was a very influential player for Palace. Wasn't necessarily the best on the field in my opinion, some may disagree, but I don't think he was the best, but I still thought he'd done an effective job in the side, and once again as the captain I thought he'd done alright in that role. Now, once again, like he always does, try to sort of get Palace going forward, try to get involved in our forward movement, and of course linking up quite well with Max Meyer as well, which of course was great to see. He was another sort of player who had loads of chances, but you know, he sort of lacked that final involvement, that further involvement. But that didn't really harm his performance, because if you've got a player who can actually drive the team going forward, that's great, and eventually one of these drives forward, or one of these chances forward, is going to come to something. So the more you do it, the more something good is going to come off the back of it. So once again, like Max Meyer, yes, he was very good at sort of going forward and getting involved. Yes, he sort of lacked that final involvement or that final pass, but it didn't really affect his performance, because I thought his overall play did make up for that. Now, of course, this was his first game in a long time, and of course it was great to see him back in the side. And, you know, considering he's been out since, I think it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, when he got injured against Man City, he's still come on the pitch, played here as the captain, showed his sort of usual confidence. I thought his ball retention was very good as well. And even though he lacked that final involvement in the final third, I still thought his range of passing was also good as well. So lots of good points to take from his performance, but I think a 6 is a fair reflection of that. So now I'm going to move on to another of our midfield players, and once again, like with Jason Punchin, he played slightly wider at some parts of the game and obviously drifted inside as well, and that of course with Jonny Williams. I'm going to give him a 7 for his performance, because I thought he was one of the better players on the pitch, and much like Punchin and Meyer, I thought he was really good at driving the team forward, and much like what I talked about with Punchin, I thought his ball retention when going forward was also very good as well. But when you consider this was his first competitive start for Palace, you know, he hasn't played quite a lot, you know, considering he's been on loan, but first competitive start for Palace since January 2014. Obviously, you're going to expect him to take some time to sort of embed himself back into the team, but I thought he was one of our more outstanding players, and one of the players who sort of stood out for me in terms of his performance. And that just goes to show that actually sometimes, even though you're away from the team, you know, like I've said, 2014 is quite a long time ago, you know. So he's been away from the team for quite a long time. But the fact that he's been able to come here and actually put in a good performance was obviously great to see as well. Main reason I've given him a 7, you may ask, purely because of the fact that he showed flashes of his ability. And like I said already, when going forward, he was involved with some of our nice moves, and quite a lot of the time, even though nothing did come from them, when he did drive forward, I thought he was very good at holding onto the ball, using his physicality to get past players, and of course that's what you expect to see from a player of his quality. Now, of course, we haven't seen his quality recently, but obviously we know that he's got it, having seen how important and how integral he was in that promotion season. Now, of course, we're all desperate for him to succeed at Palace, you know, me included, and maybe if he can have an injury-free season, like I've said at the beginning of this section of the podcast, you know, a few players stood out for me and probably is giving Roy Hodgson really hard problems, because he's going to have to decide what to do with them, because they're putting in good performances. Because to be honest, I think if he has an injury-free season, that could see him take his chance, stake his claim, and actually have a place in the squad. Now, personally for me, I don't see him having a place in the starting 11, but certainly coming off the bench, I could see him being a bench option, because of, like we saw in this game, how good his ball retention is. That could actually certainly be good going forward, but he has to stay injury free. But certainly his performance here, I've given him a 7, done no harm with this good performance, because certainly it's going to give sort of question marks to Roy Hodgson as to whether he wants to involve him more, because we've seen the quality he's got here. So hopefully Hodgson sees that and, you know, tries to utilise him in the squad, even if it is just a few games here and there off the bench. I certainly think we've got a player with good ability here, which we of course need to utilise. Now, the final player of the starting 11, that was obviously the striker Alexander Sorloth. Going to give him a 6 for his performance, because I thought although he did score the goal, he obviously had loads of chances. Because he missed them chances, I can't really give him a 7, albeit his goal was very good. But I think in the sort of first half, I suppose, I could say he was sort of guilty of conceding possession quite cheaply at times. But like I've said, with people like Cheikh Kouyaté, I thought he was quite slow to start the game. But once the game went on, I thought he grew better. He got better and better, grew into the game. And although he missed a couple of good opportunities, when that one did come for him, right in front of goal, in between two defenders, and, you know, he saw the space in that far corner, when that one chance came to him, it was on the plate for him. After that fantastic pass of Riedewald, he made no mistake, rifled it into the net. Obviously, great for him to obviously get his first competitive goal for Palace. And, you know, even though in pre-season we were playing against lesser oppositions, it was of course great to see him score goals there. So hopefully, with him sort of getting a run now in the cup games, hopefully against West Brom he can get a few goals here, and hopefully coming off the bench in the Premier League games he can get a few goals here and there. Because I certainly think this is obviously going to do his confidence the world of good, scoring a goal like this. And obviously it was great for it to be the winning goal as well, because I thought in the game, even though it was quite a drab game in terms of quality, the fact that we had a player of his ability to just sort of basically kill the game dead for us, get that winning goal, that was of course great to see. And like I said already, he got the goal. Yes, he probably should have had the goal at Chelsea, and I talked about that last season, but you could realistically, this is his official first goal, and hopefully it will do him the world of good, because I think he's still trying to sort of acclimatise, let's say, to English football, trying to get used to it. But I think, like I've said, with him getting chances in the cup and putting in good performances like this is going to do him no harm, and hopefully he'll be one of these players who comes off the bench, be a really good impact sub for us, and then when he gets a chance in the cup, he can obviously show his quality here. But like I've said already, first half slightly disappointing, but slowly grew into the game. Very physical up top, had a few chances which he probably arguably should have done better with, but the fact that he was able to get on the end of these good chances, and then when the best one came to him, able to finish it off for a goal, that's of course, is for me, that's obviously one of the most important things. So I'm just going to move on now to the subs before I go on to give you just an overall summary of the game. Obviously Joe Ward came on for Marty Kelly the 62nd minute. I'm going to give him a 6. He obviously played at centre back just in the final hour. Didn't put a foot wrong, mainly because Swansea already a goal down, sort of couldn't really get back into the game because of the inexperience in their side. And the only reason Joe Ward came on is because I think Kelly will start against Southampton. So basically he came on just to provide us a bit of fresh legs, give him a bit of game time, because obviously Wan-Bissaka is going to take his place in the first team Premier League squad, let's say. But I still do think Joe Ward, he could be one of these players now who may not necessarily be that good anymore at right back, because obviously he's a bit slower, not a great at crossing as he used to be, but maybe he could be a player whose future is at centre back, because he showed here that he can be a competent defender on his day. So maybe this could be the transition with Roy Hodgson, sort of transitioning Ward as he did with Kelly to sort of a centre-back role, because he isn't quite physical enough or quite quick enough to play right back anymore. But certainly in this game here, gave us fresh legs and didn't really put a foot wrong the time he was on the field. Obviously Andros Townsend came on for Jeffrey Schlupp at the same time. It was a double substitution on the 62nd minute. Gonna give him a 6 because he was one of these players who came off the bench, basically just gave us a bit more pace up front, bit of a quality injection as well, just sort of improving the squad we had on the field. And obviously ultimately he was one of the players who got us kicking in that second half, pushing for that goal, and obviously was one of the main reasons we went on to win the game. But like I said already, he came on the pitch trying to sort of get Palace on the front foot. Basically after his introduction he'd done exactly that, and obviously the Swans defence being a bit sort of inexperienced, obviously because they haven't played before, and it was I think a few debuts in their side as well. Obviously Andros Townsend with his pace, with his quality, causing them lots of problems, and that's certainly what you would expect from a player of his quality, coming off the bench. And the fact that he came on and the intensity change just goes to show how much of an impact he had on the side. Now of course Sullay Kaikai came on for Jonny Williams in the 78th minute. I'm going to give him a 6 as well. Once again I thought Jonny Williams was excellent in the game, and I thought Sullay Kaikai coming on, obviously when you replace a player who's had a good game it might be hard to replicate it, but I thought he looked very lively, had lots of pace, and like I've said already, we were trying to get on that front foot, and I thought that Sullay Kaikai was quite important in that, because he tried to get forward as much as possible on the wing, and obviously add to that the fact that he had a few chances to score as well, and if it wasn't for their goalkeeper we probably would have won the game 2, maybe 3-0 as well. So it just goes to show that although Jonny Williams had a great game, Sullay Kaikai came on the pitch and certainly didn't do anything wrong as well, and certainly did provide us with a bit more pace up front, and obviously had a few chances to score on himself. And like I said already, he looked lively, had a couple of good chances to seal the tie, and like what I said with Townsend and Joe Ward, it's all about coming off the bench, making an impact, changing the game, and certainly him in particular in Kaikai done that. But I do think all 3 substitutions came on and certainly did make an impact in terms of helping us to push on and get something from the game. But my overall views of the game is just that it was a very sort of professional, competent performance in obviously what was the 3rd game in 8 days for Palace. It's obviously quite difficult sometimes for players with fatigue and things like that, the fact that they play so many games in so many days. But actually I thought the team done alright, and I think Hodgson done the good thing in terms of just giving only playing 2 players who've played at the weekend. The fact that he just gave the whole team fresh legs didn't really affect the whole team's fatigue, and the fact that even though the team hasn't really played that much together because it's a reserve team, the fact that they're still able to put in a very professional, competent performance is of course great to see. Now obviously, like I've said already, because we played that many games in a few days, it was inevitable that Roy Hodgson was going to make changes. He made plenty of changes to the side, obviously providing debuts and sort of just run out to the fringe players, but that's obviously good as well. You know, I like to see players being given their debuts, giving young players a chance rather than just loaning them out. And of course, just the players who don't really play that often, just give players like Jonny Williams, like the likes of Sullay, Kaikai, give these players a chance who are fringe players, just so they can show their quality. And certainly Hodgson made the right decision, because the players did impress me, and impressed me enough to think that he would think maybe he needs to have them in contention to be in that matchday squad because of their performances. Now, of course, like I've said already, the game, two reserve teams playing against each other, not really going to have too much quality. But basically, the goal was decided by one goal. Obviously, that was Palace's first goal. The fact that Sorloth finished it after that fantastic ball from Jaïro Riedewald once again just showed that it can take just one moment of brilliance, albeit it was the assist and the goal. It just takes two moments of quality, but it takes that just one moment of quality just to win the game. And obviously, that's how we ended up winning it. But once again, like I said already, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he shone throughout the game. You know, in that first half, he played fantastic. The second half as well, with that confidence from getting that goal, he kept going, kept bombing forward, and obviously he was having more impact as the game went on. And obviously he got sent off against Liverpool, so he's just come back from his suspension. Doesn't seem to have affected his morale anyway, because he just come back and put in another solid performance as well. But like I've said already, in a game like this where it's quite tight because you're playing two reserve sides, it just takes one moment of quality. And of course, Palace not only had the moment of quality in terms of that ball from Riedewald and the great finish by Sorloth, but we also had it in the fact that we had a player like Aaron Wan-Bissaka playing as well as he has in the Premier League, playing it in the cup game here. But to be honest, in truth, looking back at the game, you could argue that we probably should have won the game more comfortably. But once again, you know, the fact that Swansea put in a battling performance made it hard for Palace. And considering both Palace and Swansea handed debut to a number of players, you can sort of understand that in the fact that, yes, arguably with the experience we've got in the squad, we should have won more comfortably. But the fact that Swansea still put up a good fight, I don't think you can discredit them saying that we should have battered them, because they've made a good account of themselves. But like I said already, nevertheless, good 1-0 win, clean sheet again, which is obviously great to see as well. And obviously playing West Brom in the next round of the Cup, it will obviously be great to see what sort of team they have as well, and whether it be the same quality as Swansea. But also, like I've said already, it would be nice for the fringe players to once again get a run out in the side. So I'm now going to move on to the Man of the Match award, but before I do that and give you my Man of the Match, you know what I thought had the biggest influence in the game, and now I'm going to give you the 4 nominations I put forward for the award. Now obviously, much like I do every week, you know, I look at the game as a whole, and actually I think this game, although it wasn't necessarily the most exciting game, you know, only finished 1-0, I actually think there were a few good performances in there, and it was actually quite difficult to narrow it down to 4 players, because there were certainly maybe 6, maybe even 7 players of that starting 11 you could pick out and go, actually they had some real moments of quality throughout the game. But the 4 players I've picked, for me, they were very consistent throughout the game, so didn't just show up in good parts for some parts of the game, but they were consistently good throughout the whole game and had certain bits which obviously did help us to eventually go on and get the win. So the 4 players I've put on the shortlist is Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Jaïro Riedewald, Max Meyer and Jonny Williams. So just to go through individually why I've put them on the shortlist, and then to give you my overall Man of the Match. Obviously Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I talked in depth in my Watford review how much we missed him, and obviously coming in here again in the Cup, you know, he just basically seamlessly slotted into that right back role, looked like he'd never been away, and impressed once again. He was absolutely outstanding. You know, not only was he doing what he always does, you know, with his slide tackling and getting the ball off the opponents and just using his pace to get in behind them to stop them going through a goal. Not only was he doing that, but something I've criticised him for in his few games he's played, the only criticism of him was his attacking play, and that's exactly what he done here against Swansea, and that's the thing that was really impressive, because down that right hand side he was our biggest threat throughout the whole game, especially sort of in that second half where we started to get going a bit. He was a total threat down that right hand side, because obviously Swansea didn't necessarily have that much pace up front. It basically meant he had lots of freedom to go down that right hand side, and quite a lot of on occasions, you know, he delivered fantastic balls into the box, as well as making some lovely runs into the box as well. So not only was his defensive play good by just making slide tackle after slide tackle, blocks after blocks, but also going forward he was very effective getting them crosses in, as well as sort of just dribbling into the box as well. And obviously Jaïro Riedewald, he was linked with Swansea over the summer, but he's come in here playing in midfield and played at left back towards the end of the game as well. very, very sort of good performance from him. You know, there's sort of not a word to describe how his performance was, because he just done a job. He was very effective in his role and done it to a high standard. Now, the thing I liked about his play is that Swansea, even though they were playing a young side, made loads of changes, they still were putting up quite a battle in midfield. So I think Riedewald helped to break that up a bit, and that's something that makes him slightly further above, let's say, than some of the other players I could have put on the shortlist, is the fact that he was quite crucial in terms of us breaking down the opposition, especially in the midfield play. Also, the fact that he came, or when he was on the pitch, when Jeffrey Slupp came off, he just slotted into that left back role. The fact that he's got the versatility as well and played in 2 positions to a high standard as well, that's why he's on the shortlist as well. And actually, the fact that he got the assist for Alexander Sorloth as well to score the winner, you know, lovely, obviously, link-up play. You know, I think it was Ryan Innes who spread the ball out wide to Riedewald, who was on the left, and Riedewald picked out this fantastic pass right in between 2 defenders. Lovely weight on it to Sorloth. Sorloth, you know, just literally rifles it past the keeper. So not only was he good in terms of his defensive work, breaking up the midfield, but also he was actually quite good going forward in the fact that he found the perfect pass for Sorloth to score the winner. So once again, much like Wan-Bissaka, not only good defensive work, but also good offensive work. Obviously, Max Meyer, you know, I've talked about him quite a lot in the Watford preview, or review, I keep saying preview, in the Watford review, quite a lot about Max Meyer and how excited I am to see him this season. Obviously, this was his first start for Palace, and I think he was absolutely fantastic. You know, he was involved, much like Riedewald, with quite a lot of the good play we were having in midfield. Nice link-up play in the midfield as well between the likes of Riedewald, Jonny Williams. So in that respect, I think Max Meyer was very good as well. But the main thing that impressed me is just he showed his sort of glimpses of his ability, you know, the passes he can provide, the sort of tackles and sort of the ability to win back the ball as well. That was the thing that really impressed me quite a lot. And the fact that he helped us in that second half where we started to get a bit more control, the fact that he sort of helped us to get on that front foot just because of how much influence he has, how good he is on the ball, how he can play a pass. Because of that and because of that quality, he helped us obviously to go forth and win the game. And although obviously like Riedewald, unless he didn't get the assist, or he didn't get an assist or a goal, but certainly he was certainly involved with quite a lot of our good play. And actually, towards the end of the game, he was one of the many players who had shots on goal which the goalkeeper saved. So if one of them long-range efforts were gone in, you'll be looking at one of the goal of the season contenders already. So once again, like Riedewald, not only good defensively, but offensively as well. And just his overall midfield play and ability was also very impressive. Now, Jonny Williams is one that may surprise a few people, but I just thought that actually he was, once again, one of the most consistent players on the pitch. Much like Meyer, was very good at carrying the ball forward and sort of being the architect of quite a few of our attacks. For me personally, we know Jonny Williams, he's got lots of ability. We saw it in the promotion season. He's been very unlucky with injuries, and of course there's been loads of loan spells. But actually in this game here, albeit against Swansea's reserve team, he did show flashes of his ability, which is great to see. And like I've already mentioned, his ability to carry the ball and sort of drive the team forward in attack was the thing that really impressed me quite a lot. And much like Meyer as well, he was involved in most of Palace's nice moves as well. So not only was he showing himself, or he wasn't just showing his sort of personal excellence, but actually he was also involved in actually some of the team moves as well. So it wasn't just about his individual performance, but he was actually involved with all of Palace's good play as well. So personally for me, I think these 4 players do certainly deserve the recognition I'm giving them here once again. And Wan-Bissaka, Jaïro, Riedewald for their defensive contribution. Obviously Meyer, Williams, and obviously the 2 players I've already mentioned in Riedewald and Wan-Bissaka, they all had sort of their attacking contribution as well, albeit not playing in attacking positions, but they all done their work. They helped, you know, Palace both in attack and defence. So overall, I think these 4 players do deserve to be on the shortlist. But for me personally, there is one standout player. You know, when you consider how well he's been in his 10 games he's played for Palace, the fact that he continues and continually puts in these high performances, you know, high levels of performances, is absolutely impressive. And the fact that despite the ability of the opposition, he still continues to do that is really quite impressive for me. So Aaron Wan-Bissaka, congratulations, you are the man of the match, or you win the man of the match award for the game against Swansea. And the main reason for me, like I've already mentioned, is the fact that he hasn't got that much experience, in the fact that he's only played 10 games, but he looks like our most experienced player on the pitch, you know, making slide tackles, getting forward, dribbling past players. Everything about his gameplay, not only in the past, but this game in particular against Swansea, was very impressive. And certainly for me, it just showed me, if we had had him playing against Watford, we may have got something from the game, you know, from that game on Sunday, because of how well he played in this game. Just showed how much quality he's got and how much we did miss him. But certainly for me, you know, he certainly does deserve it, but I think you've got to give mentions to Riedewald, Meyer and Williams just because of their attacking and defensive contribution as well. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got interviews with Roy Hodgson, Alexander Sorloth and Ryan Innes following the game.
Alex, congratulations, your first Palace goal. How happy are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy. It's always nice to get the first goal out of the way, and hopefully I can score more goals from here.
And it's not too long after pre-season, but how good is it to get 90 minutes in the tank as well?
Yeah, of course, it's good for fitness primarily, and also to get the playing time and gain the confidence, and of course to get a goal as well. I'm very happy.
And the main thing tonight was getting through progression to the next round. Difficult Swansea side to break down, weren't they?
Yeah, I think we struggled a little bit in the first half. We didn't have many chances created, and we lacked some runs in behind and stuff. But the second half, I think we were much better. So yeah, overall, I think it was a good game and we could win more.
And Saturday, Southampton at home, tough game. Looking forward to it?
Yeah, of course. Looking very much forward to it. It's the last game before the international break, so hopefully we'll finish the period be really good.
Ryan, you've been at Palace for a long time, and it must be a proud moment to make your first start.
Yeah, of course. Very grateful also. I've had a lot of injuries. The club has stuck by me off the field things, and I'm grateful for the support and the backing I've had, family, friends and people at the club. So hopefully it's onwards and upwards now, wherever it may be. But yeah, it's a great opportunity for me and I'm happy.
And clean sheet is what every defender wants, isn't it?
Yeah, start with a clean sheet. Definitely, it was a real eye-opener. The intensity of the game, first half, obviously I've been out in the lower leagues. It's a different kind of football, but felt like I grew into the game. Second half we come out, sorted a few things out, didn't take as many liberties and tried to move the ball. So there's a lot of things I can take from tonight, but like you said, clean sheet, I'll be sleep well tonight.
And played alongside Martin Kelly, someone very experienced. How was he to play next to?
Yeah, definitely. Martin's looked after me even over the years. He's been here, even when I haven't been with him so much. So he talks me through it. Listen, he'll tell me, right, don't take liberties, a couple of touches out there, just defend first and then play. And he's been good, even off the pitch. Keeps me on the ball, you know what I mean? So it's been good.
And as you say, different level of football and a cup game as well. Did that add something to it?
Yeah, definitely. We knew coming into it, we didn't take Swansea lightly. They can move the ball. Very sharp, good movement. So it was good for me. Big lad myself, 6'5", 6'6". It's good to get my feet going, and there's a lot of things I can work on, and that's good. I always want something to work on. It keeps me hungry, so I need to stay on it and hopefully build from here.
As you say, a good place to build from. What are your hopes for the rest of the season?
I'll take it step by step. Listen, the more I can spend with the first team would be great. But if it's away from here, wherever it may be, I'm just, to be honest, it sounds silly, but I'm privileged to be fit, be in professional football still, given the things that have happened to me recently. So I can only thank the club and those around me, and I just want to stay fit and hopefully show what I can do. So
Roy, 1-0 win and progression to the next round. Happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with it. I'm particularly happy with the second half. I thought we played well in the second half, and I thought we deserved to win the game. And I'm also delighted that players who actually needed to play in a Palace shirt and make a competitive debut did so. Alex scoring his first goal at this competitive level, which was important too. And of course, fantastic once again that we get so many travelling supporters. I must say, I wouldn't have been too surprised in a game like today, when they probably realise that a lot of our more famous players are not going to be playing. I wouldn't have been so surprised if not so many had turned up, but it was quite incredible the number that turned up, and their support was excellent as always.
And as you mentioned, Alex got his first goal. How important is it for a striker to get up and running?
Well, his general play was good, I thought, especially from about the midway through the first half through to the end of the game. I thought he held the ball up well. He was a constant menace in the air, and thought his hold-up play was good, and he was getting in the box, and chances were, and half chances were coming his way, but the goal was a very good one. It was a good finish, but it was also a good move.
And how difficult is this kind of game to prepare for? It's the second game in 3 days.
Well, the difficulty really was, I was protective really of the players who've been playing in the first team. Bissaka, of course, who lost his place only because of the suspension, but I was protective, of course, of Kelly and Ward and Schlupp and Townsend and these people, and I didn't want them to be playing 90 minutes football. I wanted the 90 minutes football really to be amongst the guys who haven't been playing 90 minutes football. But I'm really pleased with the way we juggled it, and luckily have come away without, I think, any injuries or any specific fatigue in the muscles, and that's also partly due to the fact the game was played in such a good spirit, such a correct way. The ref was good, but really it wasn't a difficult game to referee because both teams were trying hard to pass the ball and play football, and it wasn't a physical battle.
And Southampton next, and as you said, lots of debuts and minutes for squad players. Will that give you something to think about?
Sure, I mean that's what these games are for, and I would think the players who've played well tonight will be disappointed if they didn't hear it's given me something to think about. But I've said all along, I think we do have a strong enough squad to give us a decent Premier League season, and tonight coming here to Swansea and winning the game proves that, I think, because anyone who thinks it's easy to come to Swansea and win, haven't seen Swansea play over the last few years.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Roy Hodgson, Alexander Sorloth and Ryan Innes had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Swansea. But make sure to come back next week for my post-match review of the game against Southampton. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.